Muhimbise, the program Evening Rush Jazz, the open talk. Of course, we have many to say. It is a political show. We talk about current affairs in Uganda and global. Of course, today I have a guest, and this is none other than Mr. Ntawango George. This is the Youth Coordinator, ANT, or Alliance Transformation. This is led by the General Grigori Mugisha Muntu. So I have his man here, he's Mr. Ntawango George. We are going to talk about many things. Muhimbise Ntawango George, that is correction there. Yes, I think you get me there. Abdu Mwesige, and there is my friend here. Good evening. Don't say it is morning, so it is a good evening, sir.
Good evening to you.
Of course, welcome to the show, and you viewers, you can follow us on our social media sites. YouTube, it is Mwesige Abdu, Instagram Mwesige Abdu, Facebook Abdu Mwesige, Twitter, you can get also some clips on Twitter, it is Mwesige Abdu. So immediately as we are going, when I say ANT, that is an opposition party based in Uganda. So if we can go straight on the point, do we have opposition in Uganda?
Obviously, you don't have to ask that question.
Yes, you said it is obvious, but the reason why you've asked, do we have opposition in Uganda? Recently we saw President DP, Honorable Mao. Many of you call him Chairman Mao, but this time it is Honorable Mao because he's the current now. He was appointed Minister for Justice and Internal Affairs. At the same time, he's a President DP. How comes that a President DP Democratic Party, if we can say it is the longest opposition party here in Uganda? It is one of the longest opposition party. But if we see the President, Honorable Mao, joining the current regime, serving as a Minister of Justice and Internal Affairs, where does this take opposition in Uganda?
Of course, what Mao did is a personal decision, and he should be accountable for that. He can explain that. And it doesn't represent the entire opposition, because he did it as an individual. It has been contested even in his own party, the Democratic Party. And it doesn't represent other parties, because it wasn't a collective decision of the parties in the opposition, neither was it a collective decision of the leaders in his party. And so his was an individual choice that like we had vertically joined government, like we had other people join government. Maybe what is clear and what people should know is that opposition cannot be defined by the individual leaders. The leaders can take whichever direction they take. They can have their personal interest. They can have problems as individuals. They can make choices. But opposition has to be about the population. What are the people saying? Are people contented with the regime? Are people disappointed? Do people want to change? Do people think that what is going on is not good? And when you look at the general outlook, you find that the population of Uganda is ready for change, is determined for change, and they have always demonstrated that during elections, even when they are not free and fair. But you've seen a big chunk of the population voting against the regime. So in this case, don't look at the leadership, look at the population, but also look at the condition. The prevailing condition in this country at the moment, the state of the economy, the state of the healthcare, the unemployment, when you look at how young people are flocking out of the country to look for jobs and all that, it all shows you that there is discontent, people are tired, people are, are frustrated, and that is what makes the opposition. It's not what the leaders at the top do.
Most of the opposition side always say people are tired, but when it comes to ballot, we see President Yoweri Kaguta Museveni, the now Teohabulwa, gets over 50%, and yet the opposition say it is people are tired, people are tired. What justifies people?
When you talk about an election, you remind me of somebody who said that those who cast their vote don't count. It's those who count the votes that decide or that vote, in other words. You have to look at the quality of the election. Is it an election that is worth being called an election? We are happy that we've just witnessed an election in Kenya, although it has been contested for some reasons. But when you look at the process, the process and the entire election, the electoral process in Kenya, it shows you that we've not been having an election here in Uganda. It shows even that the process and how good it was. You didn't see people being arrested, you didn't see tear gas, you didn't see violence. But even at the end of the day, still there are some contestations. But when you come here, the contestations begin from the registration of voters to the entire electorate, to the way the results are declared. You've seen a number of petitions going to court and challenging parliamentary elections. So when you look at the election that we have in this country, it's not an election that reflects the will of the people. It's not an election that is worthy being called an election. So you cannot base on it. You cannot use it as a yardstick to determine whether the opposition has support or not. And also let me tell you this, that even in countries where the ruling party has had support or declared that they have won elections, at times after winning an election overwhelmingly with 90%, you see people rising and removing the government. You saw it in Sudan. Omar al-Bashir, he was very powerful, he used to get a lot of support. You saw Tunisia, by the time Ben Ali was removed, had won an election with over 90%. You saw what happened in Egypt. Hosni Mubarak, when he was removed, they had just gotten a huge percentage. Habyarimana in Rwanda used to get 99 point something percent, 98 point something percent. But the people were not, it was just a stage managed election. It was just a selection, not an election. And so at the end of the day, people would rise up and remove a government. You saw it in Burkina Faso and in so many other countries. Therefore, whether Museveni gets 90, 100%, that doesn't matter. As long as this is not reflected does not reflect the will of the people, then it's just a matter of time that you can see him crumble despite those huge percentages.
Okay, we have a regime, that is the National Resistance Movement, that has governed this country for almost 40 years now. Almost 40 years. We have been having opposition, and we also claim that we also have opposition even now. What or how has the people of Uganda benefited from opposition?
First of all, you would actually ask whether they have benefited from the government, because it is voted to, or it is in power to serve their interests, and they pay their taxes to the government. So it's the government which should be accountable to the people. It should be the people to benefit from the government. But also opposition has benefited Uganda in so many ways. First of all, we have created civic awareness, civic competence. People are more informed than they were before. People now can challenge the status quo. You've seen people just in villages, people waking up and saying this road is bad, we need to act. You see people demonstrating. You've seen here in Kampala traders demonstrating, taxi drivers, what. All that shows you that we have a more civically competent population as a result of the opposition activism, but also the number of programs that government has put in place because of the opposition. The students' loan scheme, which we have right now, was a brainchild of the opposition. It was in the FDC manifesto of 2016. It wasn't even in the NRM manifesto. But it's now a program that is helping Ugandans. You all know the famous graduated tax, which was removed when Dr. Besigye proposed it. It wasn't in the NRM manifesto or in the Museveni's manifesto. So there are a lot of things that really the opposition has, even coming out to expose, bad law, to fight bad laws, to expose certain things which are not good, people who are corrupt. There are a lot of things which opposition have done in parliament, outside parliament, and I think the people of Uganda, if there was no opposition, yes, we are in a bad state, but we would be in a more worse state if the opposition wasn't there.
Okay, now in Uganda here, the opposition have tried many times to have a joint or a sole candidate from the opposition. They have tried many times and failed. What could be the challenge? Can this time of 2026, can we have a sole candidate from the opposition?
There are many things which have to be done, not necessarily having a joint candidate. First of all, we need to fight hard to ensure that our electoral process and our political environment is able to create a level playground where all participants can participate and be able to exercise their rights. We have to look at the political process. But even then, leaving other factors constant, opposition unity is important. But even when it is not achieved, we cannot stop agitating, we cannot stop fighting for it. But also even building our institutions or our political parties, our political forces. If you were uniting, maybe bringing together 50 rabbits to compete with an elephant, it wouldn't make sense. But if you had maybe 50 cows combining to fight an elephant, maybe it would make sense. So we have to focus on building our parties, our institutions, so that even when we are coming together, we are bringing together a combined effort of different strong forces. But if you have a party which is based in Kampala and doesn't have leadership on the ground, in my district in Kamwenge, or in Chiruhura, or in Isinji, or in Soro, or in Abim, or Tidohoya, if you are bringing together such a parties, you find we are just bringing together a group of people in Kampala who do not have a ground. So what we need to do is to focus on building our strength and our capabilities as individual parties, so that when we come together now as a grand coalition, we are bringing together efforts, we are bringing together our synergies to fight the regime. So it's possible that if we do that successfully, and we are fighting to have a more fair and level playground, that we can have a united front in the next election. And also, even when we don't have that, it could be a strategy to scatter the votes, assuming that the votes would be declared in a fair manner. You can have a presidential candidate, different presidential candidates, and one gets 20%, another one gets 30%, another one 5%, and Museveni doesn't get 50%. So it can also be a strategy that let's have different candidates with different appeals, with different strengths from the various corners of the country, with the purpose of failing Museveni to garner the minimum 50+%. And that one would also be a strategy. So whether unity or not, it's important that we cooperate, we work together on issues where we agree. On issues where we don't agree, we don't focus there. I think that way would be able to make it, and would be able to succeed, whether with a united, with a single candidate, a joint candidate, or without a joint candidate.
Actually, there are many people who say they are opposition in opposition themselves. What do I mean here? For example, if I can say the recent elections, I would like to know, for example, in Kamwenge district, that is Kivale East constituency, I would like to know how the ANT, or the ANT, which criteria did you use to have a candidate for MP Kivale East, your candidate? Because it is a hearsay, I may not have records, but it is a hearsay that you as Muhimbise George are connived with the sitting area member of parliament, Kivale East. Then you had to push aside someone who had the potential. You brought another person. Then after registering, you had to pull out. You had your own programs. Which criteria did you use to have a candidate in Kivale East?
First of all, we did not have primaries as a party because we are new. We didn't have enough structures to choose a candidate. That was one. So there was a process that there was a committee at the national level where there would be 2 or more candidates vying for a seat, and they failed to harmonize. The committee at the national level would sit and decide, and either say you get out or maybe go in another position, something like that. So what happened is that when the process came, many candidates came. We had several meetings at the headquarters trying to harmonize. Unfortunately, 2 candidates failed to agree, and the party leadership at the top also did not decide to give one candidate a flag. They opted to go to the ground, to the district. And when they went to the ground, the then district coordinator, unfortunately, who passed on, and the other leaders, the interim committee, because the candidate who lost was Nelson. He was the secretary for mobilization on the district interim committee. I was the youth coordinator. There was a district coordinator and others, and other leaders as well. So when they went to the ground with some of the leaders from the national level, they made an assessment. They even moved around to ask some people, and they asked the leaders who were on the ground, and they chose to pick George Atuhire Wilson to be the flag bearer. So it was not me, I was the youth coordinator. I was not the coordinator, I was not the secretary, I was not the electoral commissioner, I was not anybody to make a decision. And even at the harmonizing committee, I was not a member, I was just called to give an opinion. Nelson was the national leader, he was the youth, he's currently the acting youth coordinator at the national level. At the district, he was the secretary for mobilization. So if someone is at the national and is at the district and has a strategic position, and the decision is taken at the national, the decision is taken and is part of that committee, then certainly he cannot say a youth coordinator was more powerful than a mobilizer, than a national youth coordinator, than what? I don't think so. But it's clear that there was a hand which infiltrated the other leaders at the ground to show that this one, Wilson, had more support than Nelson, and then that is how he came to get out of the race, because I'm sure that he did not get out of the race by himself. At least he had predetermined mind for that. It was unfortunate that as a party we failed to detect that. It was unfortunate that we fronted the candidate as a party who did not come to go through. It was unfortunate that there was those miscommunications and some people being not happy and not being contented. But then all the power lied in the committee which was vetting at the headquarters, where I'm not a member, where I don't sit. And now that a decision was taken and that's how it went, we have to learn from that as leaders, as members of the party, and see that in the next election or in any other process, we do not find ourselves into such a problem. We need to learn, we need to pick lessons, and then see how to grow the party together. And that is why, despite that, I'm happy Nelson is active and working for the party. I'm here doing what I can for the party. We need to move forward and pick lessons from the previous experience.
Okay, we are left with a few minutes to the climax of this program. Now there is a hiking price in commodities here in Uganda. If you are in the government, you as opposition, if you are now the leading party in the government, what would you have done to these hiking prices in commodities?
Well, there are a lot of things which can be done, and it's a system issue. It's not something that you can just fix in a day. For example, if you are in a crisis, you need to apply the resources you have in a more efficient way. You have to use the little that you have in a way that is productive. You've just been following what is going on, that we have an airline that has made a loss of 500 billion shillings in a space of about 3 years. In just last year, we lost 200 billion. And indicators are that we are not about to make any profit, we are still making more losses. So if you're in a country, a poor country like Uganda, and you're in a crisis, you're in a financial crisis, businesses have collapsed, how do you invest in a company that is making losses in huge amounts of money? Why wouldn't you invest that money in an area that is productive? For example, we have food shortage in Karamoja and in other parts of the country, and this was seen, we could have seen it before. There were indicators, there were early warning signs by different NGOs. Government would have invested money in the agriculture sector so that we can produce more food. If we've been producing maybe 1 million tons of maize, then we start producing 2 million. Then we'll invest in the entire value chain, in the processing, in the marketing, in the post-harvest handling and all that. So if government invested in sectors which are productive, one, they would enable citizens to produce more than they are producing. So that even when you are in a crisis, but you are earning, that even when you are in a crisis, you know now the shillings has even gone up. It's because our trade balance is negative. We are importing more than we are exporting. So if we increase production here locally, then you're able to export more. And when you're able to export more than what you're importing, or averagely, if the exports and imports are somehow balancing, then the country is able to earn more foreign exchange, and it is this foreign exchange that would help the citizens and then stabilize the economy. So the government's strategic intervention should have been invest in productive sectors and avoid spending in sectors where you don't benefit, where you don't have a comparative advantage. Put loans at small interest rates for business people. There are many businesses which have collapsed during COVID. You've seen hawkers who were chased from the city just very recently. All those people are idle. They need starting capital. They need to work. We have a population where 50%, 52% is below 18 years of age. So they are not working. They are dependents. And you have youth between 18 to 75 years to 35 years. We are about a quarter of the population, about 10 million are between that age, and these people do not have jobs. 56% of them, according to UBOS, are in what we call vulnerable employment. They are employed, but they are way, like the way people say these days. So if you have such a population which is energetic, which is skilled, and it is not earning, it is not employed gainfully, and then you have another huge population of dependents who are depending on these ones, who are also vulnerable, then you have a crisis. And all this can be done if government is able to strategically invest in production. But also there are issues like we are talking of fuel prices and all that. There are also issues to do with the government can do many things. It can do some subsidy. On petrol there is a tax of 1,350 on petrol. On diesel it's 1,000 and maybe 31 shillings. If you reduce this tax by 50%, you'd be able to save, you'd be able to reduce on the cost of fuel. There are issues to do with transportation. I'm happy they are working on the railway line. Probably it can reduce on the cost of importing fuel. There are issues to do, you find the same petrol station, fuel station in Kampala selling fuel at different prices. You find somewhere in Kololo, the price is up. Somewhere in Kamuja, the price is down. So if you have these kinds of situation where prices are not stable even in the same company, in the same location, then it means there is a likelihood that even there are other factors which are leading to hiking of fuel, which have not been handled. If they were handled, which would probably reduce on the cost, because even if you reduce the cost of fuel by maybe 500 shillings, it would mean a lot. It would have a cumulative effect on the prices of other commodities. So what is clear is that we need some policy shifts, we need some strategic thinking in government, we need some deliberate decisions and actions being taken, and that is when we can try to minimize. We can also look at the East African community. There are many taxes we pay when we are importing through Kenya. Maybe East African community could sit and say, what do we do? How can we reduce on the taxes if we have free trade, like they say? If we have East African community, why should I be taxed because I'm taking something through Kenya? Why should Kenyan products that come to Uganda be overtaxed? So all those are areas which can be looked into to try to mitigate the current situation.
Okay, we are left with only 2 minutes to come to a conclusion of this show. You have always seen you open letters to President Museveni, to Muhozi on different social media sites. Where do you get the guts to have those? And have they ever reached the destination you want them to be?
The destination is not necessarily those I'm writing to about, because I know they don't care, they don't listen. Many have advised them and they've not heed to the advice. So if I say an open letter to President Museveni and I'm writing about a specific issue, I'm not actually writing to President Museveni. I'm writing about Ugandans. I want Ugandans to read and understand what is going on and be able to act. It's like you go in the Bible and you read those letters to Galatians. They are not necessarily intended for the Galatians, they are intended to the population, to the people. So whatever I write, it is not intended for those in power, because I know that they have reached, they are stuck, they are addicted to power, they cannot change anything, they cannot change themselves, they have been conditioned, they have been programmed in their mind to act the way they act. But now it's about the Ugandans, the people of Uganda. And so, whether they reach the destination or not, that is not my issue. My issue is that Uganda need to be aware of what is going on, and then they need to be able to come out and fight and defend their country, because ultimately the struggle to change this country does not lie in any individual leader. They lie in us, the people of Uganda, knowing the problem, knowing how to approach it, and knowing that we have a duty to play in addressing the problem that we have.
Okay, so the people of Kibale County expect you on ballot 2026? We conclude that.
I am not, I've not made that decision yet. There is a long way to go between now and 2026. As a politician, of course, I have political ambitions, but I'm a person who moves step by step. I'm a person who strategizes, and when time comes and I am ready and I have done what I need to do behind the curtains, then I'll have to come to the public and say, here I am, send me. So for now, I cannot make such a pronouncement because I'm still calculating and seeing the best way to do it. What is clear is that ultimately, at any given point in time, I will be there. And the day I come, it will be, I will not just come to contest or to be on the ballot. I will come to join Parliament. And that is why I'm careful of making any pronouncement when I've not yet made up my mind, when I've not yet laid all the strategies down and all the tools down for that specific issue.
All right, that has been the Youth Coordinator Muhimbise George for ANT. I've been Abdu Mwesigan program Evening Rush Jazz, the open talk. You can also continue with your comments in our social media sites, Mwesige Abdu on YouTube, Facebook Abdu Mwesige, Twitter Mwesige Abdu, Instagram Mwesige Abdu. Then catch you next time. I have been with Elijah Moons on camera. See you again.